What's going on, guys? It's Coach Ian here from Legacy Endurance, helping you run further, faster, and more focused. And this week we're talking about the long run. And I'm going to start off with a really bad analogy. This is your long run. That's the goal. Stick around. Alright guys, so we are talking about the long run this week. One of the more important workouts you're going to be faced with in your training, especially if you're going after a half marathon, marathon distance. It's a real key workout. And you know, the analogy with the sponge, that stupid little analogy, is basically just to point out that the goal of the workout is to maximize, get every ounce of benefit that you're looking for, especially in that long run, because it makes up a good chunk of your weekly mileage and it's a key workout. I'm going to take you to the whiteboard here in a couple minutes and just show you some things. I'm going to use a real live example of how you can maximize that workout and how you can sabotage the long run by simply making a few mistakes in execution. I see a lot of people that don't fully cash in that long run. So we're going to get into that. I'll show some things to you on the whiteboard just to get you thinking. But before we do that, it's important just to think about and understand what are the key benefits that we're looking for in a long run. Now, there's a lot of good reasons why and benefits you can get out of the long run, but a few of the main reasons why it's important is, number one, is we're building our aerobic system, our aerobic capacity, our body's ability to not have to work as hard to sustain that aerobic output. So strengthening the heart, strengthening that system by spending lots of time at an easy pace in that aerobic zone, that's what we're looking for. So the longer we can stay aerobic, the more adaptation we get, and it translates into a better performance come race day. The second thing that a long run will do to you is it'll start to help your body be more efficient at utilizing energy sources in the body, and specifically it starts to get better at utilizing fat as an energy source versus strictly just glycogen. It also teaches the body to be more effective at storing glycogen for energy, so you've got more energy for longer periods of time. And the third reason why the long run is beneficial is it helps to build mitochondria in the body, the number, the density, the size, and they're powerhouses. They're fuel sources for you in the body. So those are key reasons. And maybe one more I'll give you is it's less physiological, it's mental. There's a lot of benefit in that long run from a mental toughness perspective. By being out there for longer periods of time, you're training your mind to be able to sustain, to be able to sort of deal with that long time running. So come race day, if you put that time in, it's going to be a huge benefit. So those are some of the reasons why we want to be using a long run in our training. And like I say, a lot of times I see people not fully maximizing that. The risk we see is people really sort of miss the intended benefits by not executing properly. So let's hit into the whiteboard. I will show you what I'm talking about. I'm going to use a real life example and we'll make some sense. Here we go. Alright guys, so I've got the whiteboard out here and I want to demonstrate to you how important it is to execute your long run effectively and get the maximum benefit. Really bring out all the value you're looking for in the long run. So I'm going to use an example of someone that I train personally, and potentially we've all fell into this trap in a long run before. And I'm going to show you in a chart sort of what we're looking for and how you can minimize the intended benefits. So on the chart here, and excuse my handwriting, it's not the greatest, but you'll get the point, is on the bottom I have time. So this was a 3-hour long run. And so we've got 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour long run. And then on the other side, on the other axis, is our effort. So in this case, I'm using heart rate as my effort to gauge whether or not we're staying in that aerobic zone or not. So for example, we're going to say, just using round numbers to make it easy to kind of understand, is maximum heart rate is, for this particular individual, was 180 beats per minute. So maximum heart rate is 100%, high as you can go, obviously. And so 65 to 75% of your maximum typically is where your aerobic zone is. And so for using that number, this person would be somewhere in that 120 to 135 beats per minute, would stay in what I would consider that aerobic zone. And so the goal there would be, obviously in the long run, is to spend 3 hours training that aerobic system. This line right here, the red line that you see going across, is about 85% of maximum. That's your threshold. So in this case, 155 beats a minute is the point at which you flip over from aerobic to anaerobic. So I've shared before in a video about the difference in sort of that threshold training. I'll link it up above so you can take a look at that afterwards. But this is that point where you flip from no longer training aerobic. And a lot of times if you sit in this area, that's junk miles. We don't want to be there. So Ideally, the goal when we're going out for a long run is over time, as we start off, I always say at 0, we get up to that aerobic pace, whatever that might be. If we're using our heart rate to sort of monitor that, we're going to spend time over the 3 hours in that aerobic zone. That's the goal. So spending as much time as possible, ideally the entire time, in that aerobic zone. And so that would be your time in green, for example. And so what happening is your pace, or your heart rate, I should say, should follow suit. So as you get going, your heart rate's going to pick up. You're going to have some fluctuations potentially, but for the most part, you want to stay in that aerobic zone. Your heart rate should stay between that 120, 135, if we're using this example, in that 65, 75% of maximum. We want to stay in that zone. Now here's where a lot of times people will mess this up, and the particular person that I'm using as an example really sort of made a mistake, was just pushing that effort up a little too high, because what happens in that long run is really, really tough sometimes. Be patient, just relax, stay aerobic. A lot of times I think we use that long run to really sort of test and see, where's my fitness at right now? Can I hold that quicker pace for a little bit longer? And so, you might push a little bit. Maybe there's a few kilometers you start feeling good and you start to push the pace a little bit. And what happened in this particular workout was right around 13, 14 kilometer mark, the athlete had started to pick up his pace. And so instead of running at 5:45 per kilometer, he was sitting around 5:15 per kilometer, still easy-ish pace, but it's starting to flirt. And so what happened was, right around that hour and a half, his heart rate started to climb up. And he started to spend some time, and so spiked in here. And so for 2-3 kilometers, he sat at that 2 kilometer, or sort of sat at that higher intensity, and then started to back off, going, this is too, checked himself, brought himself back down. But here's the catch. His heart rate stayed up in that sort of junk zone for the rest of the workout, and he never recovered. Because what happens is, our heart rate does not match our pace identically. If it was perfect, you could quickly correct, but what happens is you start to elevate that heart rate, you spend some time sitting at that threshold, and then you drop your pace back down. Your heart rate does not drop in tandem with that. And so what we saw happen in his workout was it sort of climbed up there. He got kind of close back to aerobic near the end, but for a good chunk of that workout, he was in a non-aerobic building zone. He was sitting in that junk mile. He actually kind of went into over his threshold for a little bit, and it was only 2 or 3 kilometers. So what happened was he spent probably 45 minutes to an hour not training his aerobic system. And so out of that 3-hour workout, he might have spent 2 hours, 2 hours, 15 minutes training that aerobic zone. And that was the benefit we were looking for. So it was a very interesting example. And I know a lot of us, like I say, have fallen, we've been guilty of making that same mistake of, pushing just a little bit too hard. The goal of that long run is to maximize the amount of time in that aerobic zone. So that's what I wanted to point out this week. So the goal when you're going out for your long run, understand where that needs to be for you, 65 to 75% of your maximum. Figure out what that pace is, figure out what your heart rate needs to be in that zone, either or, both, and that'll really help you to stay aerobic and maximize, get all the goodness out of your long run. So hopefully that helps. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. Really appreciate it. If you're new to the channel, I'd love it if you consider subscribing, like and share. Thanks so much for checking in, guys. Happy running, and I'll talk to you guys next week. We'll see you later.